Welcome back to the Genius Circle community and our comprehensive exploration of the inner critic. I'm Dr. Bren, and we've been building a deep understanding of how this powerful internal voice develops and operates. In our previous installments, we've explored the foundational worldview differences between materialist and spiritual approaches, how the critic forms through developmental stages and defense mechanisms, and how trauma and cultural forces can amplify its intensity. Today, in Part 4, we're going to get remarkably specific about your inner critic by exploring how each Enneagram personality type develops characteristic patterns of self-criticism. This isn't just theoretical knowledge. Understanding your type's specific critic patterns gives you a precise roadmap for transformation. The Enneagram reveals that while we all have inner critics, they don't all sound the same or attack the same vulnerabilities. Your personality type shapes not just what your critic says, but how it operates, when it activates most intensely, and what it's trying to protect you from. Whether you're familiar with the Enneagram or new to it, this exploration will help you recognize your own critic's signature patterns and understand why certain messages feel so particularly devastating while others barely register. So let's dive into how your personality type creates your critic's unique voice and strategy. Understanding the three centers. Before we explore each type individually, it's crucial to understand how the Enneagram's three centers relate to inner criticism, the body, gut, anger center, types 8, 9, 1. These types have a primary relationship with anger and instinctual energy. Their critics tend to focus on control, perfection, and managing their impact on the world. The heart, feeling, shame center, types 2, 3, 4. These types have a primary relationship with emotions and image. Their critics tend to focus on worth, identity, and how they're perceived by others. The head thinking, fear center, types 5, 6, 7. These types have a primary relationship with anxiety and mental activity. Their critics tend to focus on security, competence, and managing uncertainty. Each center brings its own flavor to self-criticism, and understanding your center helps explain the emotional quality of your critic's attacks. The gut, anger types, 8, 9, 1. Type 1, the perfectionist inner critic, operates like a relentless quality control inspector that never rests, focusing on errors and imperfections. Type 8, the challenger. Inner critic attacks vulnerability and weakness, intensifying during moments when the 8 might need support. Type 9, the peacemaker, inner critic operates subtly through minimization rather than direct attack, erasing personal needs and perspectives. Type 1, the perfectionist. Core fear, being corrupt, defective, or wrong. Core desire, to be good, right, and perfect. The Type 1 inner critic. The Type 1 critic is perhaps the most relentless and detailed of all the types. It operates like an internal quality control inspector that never takes a break. Characteristic messages: that's not good enough. It needs to be perfect. You made a mistake, which proves you're flawed. Everyone else is being lazy, sloppy, irresponsible. You should have done it correctly the first time. There's a right way to do everything, and you're not doing it. How it operates constantly scans for errors, inefficiencies, and imperfections, compares everything to an ideal standard that's often impossible to meet, focuses intensely on details and procedures, activates strongly around mess, chaos, or wrong ways of doing things, often disguises itself as helpful guidance but feels harsh and demanding. What it's protecting, the one's critic develop to help them be good enough to avoid criticism and maintain their sense of integrity. It tries to prevent the shame of being wrong or bad. The growth edge. Learning that perfection is not the same as wholeness, and that good enough can actually be perfect in its own way. Type 8, the challenger. Core fear. Being controlled, vulnerable, or harmed. Core desire. To be self-reliant and in control of their own life. The Type 8 inner critic. The Type 8 critic is often less obvious because 8s tend to externalize criticism, but it's intensely focused on strength and control. Characteristic messages. You're being weak and pathetic. Don't let them see your vulnerability. You should be able to handle this alone. Needing help makes you a burden. Strong people don't have these problems. How it operates. Attacks any sign of vulnerability, neediness, or dependence, intensifies during moments of illness, emotional overwhelm, or when help is needed, often manifests as self-reliance taken to unhealthy extremes, may be less verbal and more felt as an internal pressure to be invulnerable, can drive workaholism and over-responsibility, what it's protecting. The 8's critic tries to prevent the vulnerability that could lead to being controlled, betrayed, or hurt by others. It maintains the protective stance of strength. The growth edge. Learning that true strength includes the courage to be vulnerable and that interdependence isn't weakness. Type 9, the peacemaker. Core fear. Loss of connection and fragmentation. Core desire. To maintain inner and outer peace. The Type 9 inner critic. The Type 9 critic is often the most subtle and insidious because it operates through minimization rather than direct attack. Characteristic messages. Your needs and opinions don't really matter. Don't rock the boat or cause conflict. You're not important enough to speak up. Other people's needs are more valid than yours. You'll just mess things up if you try to take charge. How it operates. Minimizes the importance of the 9's own perspectives and needs. Activates strongly when the 9 considers asserting themselves. Works through deflection and self-erasure rather than direct criticism. Often sounds reasonable and humble, making it harder to identify, can lead to chronic underachievement and self-neglect. What it's protecting. The 9's critic tries to prevent conflict that could threaten relationships and belonging. It maintains peace by making the 9 small and accommodating. The growth edge. Learning that their voice and needs matter and that healthy conflict can actually strengthen relationships. The heart feeling types 2, 3, 4. Type 2, the helper. Inner critic focuses intensely on relationships and self-worth through service, attacking any focus on personal needs. Type 3, the achiever. Inner critic is performance-focused and concerned with image, driving relentless pursuit of goals and recognition. Type 4, the individualist. Inner critic is emotionally intense, creating storms of self-doubt focused on identity and perpetual feelings of deficiency. Type 2, the helper. Core fear. Being unloved or unwanted for themselves. Core desire. To feel loved and wanted. The Type 2 inner critic. The Type 2 critic is focused intensely on relationships and worth through service to others. Characteristic messages. You're only valuable if you're helping others. Your needs are selfish and burdensome. You're not doing enough for other people. If you were really loving, you'd anticipate their needs perfectly. People will leave you if you're not constantly giving. How it operates. Attacks. Any focus on the 2's own needs or self-care intensifies when the 2 considers saying no or setting boundaries. Monitors constantly for signs that others might not need them. Often disguises self-criticism as concern for others can drive compulsive, helping, and martyrdom. What it's protecting. The two's critic tries to ensure love and belonging by making the two indispensable to others. It prevents the vulnerability of having needs. The growth edge, learning that they're lovable for who they are, not just what they do for others, and that having needs is part of being human. Type 3, the achiever, core fear, being worthless or of no value apart from their achievements, core desire, to feel valuable and worthwhile. The type 3 inner critic. The type 3 critic is performance-focused and intensely concerned with image and success. Characteristic messages. Your worth comes entirely from your achievements. You're only as good as your last success. Everyone else is doing better than you. If you slow down, you'll be exposed as a fraud. Failure means you're worthless. How it operates drives relentless pursuit of goals and recognition. Compares constantly to others' achievements, attacks during any downtime or rest periods, focuses on external metrics of success rather than internal satisfaction, can create workaholism and burnout. What it's protecting, the 3's critic tries to maintain worth and avoid the shame of being seen as unsuccessful or failing. It drives achievement as a defense against worthlessness. The growth edge, learning that their inherent worth exists independent of achievements and that being authentic is more valuable than being impressive. Type 4, the individualist, core fear, having no identity or personal significance. Core desire, to find themselves and their significance. The type 4, inner critic. The type 4 critic is perhaps the most emotionally intense, focused on identity and specialness. Characteristic messages. You're fundamentally flawed and defective. Everyone else has something you lack. You're too much, not enough, different in all the wrong ways. If people really knew you, they'd reject you. You'll never have what others have naturally. How it operates. Creates intense emotional storms of self-hatred. Compares constantly to others, always finding the 4, lacking alternates between I'm uniquely terrible and I'm uniquely special. Attacks the 4's core sense of identity and belonging, can drive depression and feelings of alienation. What it's protecting. The 4's critic, paradoxically, tries to maintain specialness even through defectiveness. It's better to be uniquely flawed than ordinary. The growth edge, learning that they can be both ordinary and extraordinary and that their emotional depth is a gift rather than a curse. The head thinking, types 5, 6, 7. Type 5, the investigator, inner critic, focuses on competence and resource management, driving endless information gathering as protection against incompetence. Type 6, the loyalist. Inner critic manifests as chronic doubt and worst-case scenario thinking, creating constant questioning about decisions. Type 7, the enthusiast, inner critic, subtly drives avoidance of limitations and negative emotions, creating pressure to maintain positivity at all costs. Type 5, the investigator, core fear. Being useless, helpless, or incapable. Core desire, to be capable and competent. The type 5 inner critic, the type 5 critic, focuses on competence and resource management, often through scarcity thinking. Characteristic messages. You don't know enough to speak up. You don't have enough energy resources for that. Everyone else is more competent than you. You'll be exposed as incompetent if you try. You should have figured this out already. How it operates. Drives endless information gathering as protection against incompetence. Attacks when the 5 considers taking action before feeling ready. Focuses on conservation of energy and resources. Can prevent engagement with the world due to fear of depletion. Often sounds rational and logical, making it harder to challenge what it's protecting. The 5's critic tries to prevent the vulnerability of being seen as incompetent or having their limited resources overwhelmed. The growth edge, learning that they have more resources than they think, and that competence comes through engagement, not just preparation. Type 6, the loyalist, core fear, being without support or guidance. Core desire, to have security and support. The Type 6 inner critic. The Type 6 critic is focused on safety and often manifests as chronic doubt and worst-case scenario thinking. Characteristic messages. You can't trust yourself to make good decisions. Something terrible is going to happen. You're not loyal, responsible, prepared enough. Everyone else is more confident and knows what they're doing. You should have anticipated that problem. How it operates creates constant doubt about decisions and self-trust. Scans environment for potential dangers and threats. Alternates between self-doubt and doubt of others. Can prevent action through analysis paralysis. Often sounds like helpful caution but creates chronic anxiety. What it's protecting. The 6's critic tries to prevent catastrophe by maintaining hypervigilance and ensuring the 6 doesn't trust the wrong people or make dangerous mistakes. The growth edge, learning to trust their own inner guidance. And that perfect security is impossible, but courage is available. Type 7, the enthusiast, core fear, being trapped in pain or deprivation. Core desire, to maintain their happiness and satisfaction. The Type 7 inner critic. The Type 7 critic often operates more subtly, focusing on avoiding limitations and negative emotions. Characteristic messages. You're missing out on something better. This isn't exciting, fun, stimulating enough. You should be happier, more grateful, more positive. Pain and discomfort means something's wrong. You're being negative and bringing others down. How it operates drives constant seeking of new experiences and stimulation attacks. When the 7 faces limitations, boredom, or difficult emotions can prevent depth and commitment through restlessness, often manifests as internal pressure to be positive and upbeat. May be less obvious because it drives toward positive behaviors. What it's protecting. The 7's critic tries to prevent the pain of limitation, loss, or negative emotions by maintaining options and optimism. The growth edge, learning that depth and commitment can be more satisfying than breadth, and that difficult emotions are part of a rich life. Integration and disintegration. The Enneagram's movement patterns reveal how our inner critics change under different conditions. Disintegration, stress. When stressed, our critics intensify and take on characteristics of our stress type, often becoming more severe and attacking. Integration, growth. When growing, our critics transform into healthier guidance, becoming more supportive and constructive in their approach. Disintegration, stress, patterns. 1 toward 4. When we're stressed and moving toward our disintegration point, our critics often intensify and take on characteristics of our stress type. 1 goes to 4. The perfectionist critic becomes emotionally intense and self-attacking. 2 goes to 8. The helping critic becomes demanding and controlling. 3 goes to 9. The achieving critic becomes apathetic and self-neglecting. 4 goes to 2. The defective critic becomes martyred and resentful. Disintegration, stress, patterns. 5, 9. 5 goes to 7. The incompetent critic becomes scattered and anxious. 6 goes to 3. The doubtful critic becomes image-focused and deceptive. 7 goes to 1. The limiting critic becomes rigidly critical and judgmental. 8 goes to 5. The vulnerable critic becomes withdrawn and isolated. 9 goes to 6. The unimportant critic becomes anxious and reactive. Integration, growth, patterns. 1 to 4. When we're healthy and moving toward our integration point, our critics can transform into healthier guidance. 1 goes to 7. Perfectionist criticism becomes flexible wisdom. 2 goes to 4. People-pleasing criticism becomes authentic, emotional expression. Goes to 6. Achievement criticism becomes loyal commitment to genuine values. 4 goes to 1. Defective criticism becomes discerning improvement. Integration, growth. Patterns. 5-9. 5 goes to 8. Incompetent criticism becomes confident action. 6 goes to 9. Anxious criticism becomes calm acceptance. 7 goes to 5. Scattered criticism becomes focused depth. 8 goes to 2. Controlling criticism becomes supportive care. 9 goes to 3. Self-minimizing criticism becomes self-actualizing motivation. Type-specific transformation. Understanding your type's specific critic patterns allows for targeted transformation approaches that address your unique challenges. Your type's critic developed as a survival strategy. It's been trying to help you navigate the world according to your type's core concerns. The following slides outline tailored strategies for each type that recognize these protective intentions while creating space for growth beyond them. Type 1, perfectionist critic. Practice good enough as a spiritual discipline. Develop tolerance for imperfection in small, safe areas. Cultivate appreciation for natural, organic processes. Work with the body to release held tension and rigidity. Type 2, helper, critic. Practice identifying and expressing personal needs. Set small boundaries and notice that relationships survive. Develop self-care practices that feel genuinely nurturing. Work with the assumption that love exists. Independent of service. Type 3, achiever. Critic, practice being rather than doing. Explore identity beyond roles and achievements. Slow down enough to feel emotions without immediately acting. Cultivate relationships where performance isn't required. Type 4, individualist. Critic, practice finding the ordinary sacred. Develop appreciation for simple, present moment experiences. Work with envy as information about desires rather than evidence of defectiveness. Cultivate stable, consistent practices rather than following emotional waves. Type 5, investigator. Critic, practice taking action with good enough information. Experiment with small engagements to test resource assumptions. Develop trust in learning through experience rather than just study. Cultivate embodied practices that connect thinking with feeling. Type 6, loyalist critic, practice. Trusting small decisions and building on success. Develop relationship with uncertainty as natural rather than dangerous. Work with doubt as one voice among many rather than ultimate truth. Cultivate practices that support nervous system regulation. Type 7, enthusiast. Critic, practice staying present with difficult emotions for short periods. Develop appreciation for depth and limitation as sources of meaning. Work with commitment as expansion rather than contraction. Cultivate practices that support presence rather than escape. Type 8. Challenger. Critic. Practice receiving support in small, safe ways. Develop tolerance for vulnerability as strength rather than weakness. Work with interdependence as natural rather than threatening. Cultivate practices that support emotional expression. Type 9. Peacemaker. Critic. Practice expressing opinions and preferences in low-stakes situations. Develop awareness of personal priorities and desires. Work with conflict as information rather than threat. Cultivate practices that support self-assertion and presence. The path beyond. Type-based criticism. While understanding your type's critic patterns is invaluable, the ultimate goal isn't to have a better type-based critic, but to access the essential self that exists beyond all personality patterns. The role of essence versus personality. Each Enneagram type represents a personality strategy that developed to cope with early life circumstances. The critic is part of this personality structure, defending the type's strategy even when it no longer serves. Essence qualities. Beyond type, natural presence and being unconditional, love and acceptance, genuine confidence and capability, authentic expression and creativity, deep peace and equanimity, integration through self-compassion. Regardless of your type, the path of integration involves recognition, seeing your type's critic patterns clearly, understanding, grasping, the protective intention behind the criticism, compassion, approaching the critic with kindness rather than resistance, choice, gradually choosing essence-based responses over personality-based reactions, integration, allowing the critic to transform from taskmaster to wise counselor. The universal practices. While each type benefits from specific approaches, some practices support everyone. Mindfulness, creating space between awareness and critical thoughts. Self-compassion, responding to mistakes with kindness rather than attack-somatic awareness. Noticing how criticism lives in the body. Spiritual practice, connecting with something larger than the personality community. Healing, the critic's isolation through authentic connection. Discovering your type's critic patterns. As we close this exploration of type-specific critic patterns, take time to reflect on your own experience. Identifying your patterns, which type's critic messages resonate most strongly with your experience? How does your critic's voice change under stress versus growth? What specific triggers activate your type's critic most intensely? How does your critic try to protect your core fears? Understanding your center. How does your body, heart, head center influence your critic's style? What emotional quality does your criticism carry, anger, shame, or fear? How does your center's basic concern show up in your critical patterns? Choose one message that's characteristic of your type's critic and practice responding differently. Notice when this specific message arises. Recognize it as your type's protective strategy. Respond with curiosity. What are you trying to protect me from? Choose a small action based on your essence rather than your type's defensive pattern. This isn't about eliminating your type's patterns, but about creating choice and flexibility within them. Thank you for joining me in this detailed exploration of how your personality type shapes your inner critic. Understanding these patterns isn't about putting yourself in a box, but about recognizing the particular box you've been living in and beginning to step outside of it. For our Genius Circle community, this type-specific understanding becomes a precise tool for transformation. When you know exactly how your critic operates, what triggers it, and what it's trying to protect, you can work with it far more effectively than with generic approaches. Remember that your type's critic developed as a survival strategy. It's been trying to help you navigate the world according to your type's core concerns. Approaching it with this understanding allows for collaboration rather than warfare. If you haven't identified your Enneagram type yet, I encourage you to explore this further. The precision it offers for inner critic work is remarkable, and it will enhance every other aspect of your personal development journey. In our next installment, we'll explore how to distinguish your critic from healthy inner guidance, a crucial skill for anyone on the path of conscious development. Until then, may you hold your type's patterns with compassion while staying open to the essence that exists beyond all personality strategies. This is Dr. Bren for the Genius Circle community. I'll see you in part 5, where we continue building your personalized roadmap for inner critic transformation.